celebrate this book. It is, in fact, your first
It
book,
is,
right?
yeah.
So let's start with the basics, Sarah. Why did you decide to do this book, and who did you write it for?
Well, I thank you for everybody for coming, first of all. It's really special to see you here. Why I wrote it was to really communicate to the public my approach to designing a kitchen. After 4 years of interior design at FIT, I worked for a kitchen firm, but never had a real solid understanding of, I was young, you know, you're in school, you learn, you know, what you learn, but you never really apply it to the outside world. But as I got into kitchens, I realized there was a real void in my mind, and I landed up on a job with Richard Sammons in 1994. And it clicked to me, my love for classical architecture. And I felt like I had just found my true love. And so I've been studying classical architecture, the classical language, and the integration of classicism into kitchens. And that's why I wrote the book, because it's really hard to explain to people in 25 words or less what it means to integrate the kitchen into the architectural aesthetic of the home. Mm-hmm. And I saw so many kitchens that didn't respect the architecture, and maybe that's right for somebody, whether it's a pre-war building or, you know, a Georgian or whatever the home may be. I really feel you have to respect its integrity.
And, you know, let's not assume that people know exactly what classic architecture is. So how do you describe it, and how do you apply that to what you do?
So many people feel that classicism is a style, and it's not a style, it's a language. And it's a set of rules and principles that one abides by to achieve proportion and scale, and to make sure that all of the parts make up the whole. And I always say, if you have a cherry pie and try to put an apple piece in it, it isn't going to work. So I really feel that the proportions, and maintaining the proportions when working on a space, from the overall height of the room and breaking it apart, and then having the incredible education that I have from experience in kitchens, I'm able to apply the function to develop the room. So not only is it aesthetically beautiful, but it's also very functional. And I always say you have to know the rules to break them. Mm-hmm. And so knowing the rules of codes and what needs to be applied to a kitchen space, it really, once you know how to break them, you can really bend the rules and really make it work.
I know you are an interior designer first.
Right.
That is your background.
Right.
What led you into falling in love with kitchens, or just generally these more utilitarian spaces in the home?
Nobody goes through school thinking they're going to go into kitchens. Trust me.
Why is that?
When I was in school, it just wasn't. It was really amazing. You didn't even think about it. And when I was 12, my parents remodeled their kitchen, and I loved it. And that's what got me into interior design. But it was my first job. I got into it by accident, mm-hmm. and I never left. But I took it to another level that I had to, because I felt that I was lacking the knowledge, and I love education and I love learning. Mm-hmm. And once I started with the ICAA and going to classes and going on trips, and it just brought a whole new dimension to what I do.
You mentioned always wanting to learn, and I know that one of your friends is a titan in the industry, somebody you have loved working with, and that is Bunny Williams.
Yeah.
Tell us who she is for anybody out there that doesn't know, but also who she is to you and what you've learned from her.
Well, when I went on my own, I started in 1980, the year Princess Diana married Charles.
Good job.
Never forget that. That was when I graduated. And in 1999, I went on my own, and in 2000, I received a phone call from Bunny. I had happened to have been on a job with her. I didn't know who she was. And she asked me to help her with a job in Cleveland, Ohio, and I said, sure, what the heck. And I went out there, and I was floored. I was brought into a world that I wasn't there yet. Mm-hmm. And I knew that I could help her from a functional in a kitchen sense, but what began to happen is she began to bring me into all the meetings. She understands how to collaborate, and she would bring me into, I was very involved in each and every project with her. And what Bunny taught me was, I never was in a design firm. I never grew up in an architectural firm. I wasn't in an interior design firm. I was in a kitchen showroom. That is not how you run a design business.
Right.
And so Bunny was really an educator and a guiding light, and has always, till this day, has always been there for me. Mm-hmm. And we work very well. Who doesn't work well with Bunny? I mean, she's so good at what she does, but she's very practical. She's very down to earth. And you can have a conversation with her, and you can work with her and collaborate with her, and it's nothing but success. Mm-hmm. It's just, she's a great person to work with. And she puts together a great team. She knows how to get it done, and she knows that you have to have a classical architect, a certain architect that understands the language. And all of us need to kind of understand that language to carry it through to the end and make sure that we're all collaborating, I feel, on the same level.
I mean, you dedicate kind of an opening thank you letter to her in the book.
She really was the beginning of my career on my own. She brought me to a place, and it just kind of took off from there.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I love about your book, or is one of the things that you've done so well, is aside from showing some of your amazing work, you also added in pro tips. What was the catalyst for that?
The pro tips started because there are so many questions and answers that happen when you're doing a kitchen. It doesn't matter if the kitchen's 10 by 10 or 40 by 80. There are so many questions that need to be answered, and there's no shortcut. If you don't answer the questions, you most likely would make a mistake.
Yeah.
And what happened was, how do you write a book, communicate my belief in architecture and the integration of the kitchen into the home, but at the same time, there's a whole vast of other things. Depths of cabinets, and now let's get into what I know as a kitchen person, and how to best store things, and the organization of a kitchen, and depths of wall cabinets. I mean, we really go into they're not 24 deep, they're 26 deep, or they're the base cabinets, or we really go into a lot of technical. And there's also a lot of technical with appliances and where to put them, and clearances. And so a lot of the pro tips were how to give people things to think about. Mm-hmm. So that as they, and some people don't read it, they want to look at the pictures. But
that's right.
The thing is the pro tips were just quick analogies of, okay, I got to think about this, I got to think about that, I got to think about this. And that's what started the pro tips, but it really has taken off.
Right, it strikes me as a bunch of nuggets. When you're going through the book, there are several moments, not just like one moment. There are several moments where I'm inside your brain, right? And I get to understand what it is that's going to make my kitchen successful or not successful,
right,
until I can hire Sarah. So as I'm thinking about spaces, it really does help people think differently
it was the easiest part of the book. It was like I would just sit there and Ellen, bless her heart, who helped me through this, would be like, you got a lot of pro tips here. Can we kind of narrow this down a little bit? Because it's really how your brain thinks and what people need to know. And okay, countertops, what stains, what doesn't stain, what's etching, what's porous, what's not porous, what's this, what's that, seams. I do this every day, so there's so much to think about. And it was a way to give people a bit of, okay, this is what I have to think about. And from there, they can ask more questions, but it's a starting point.
It's a great starting point because I feel like it does give people an easy way in, right? The stories that you tell throughout the book, though, and I know we've got some of these pictures. I wrote one of those stories for House Beautiful.
Yes, you did.
I did write that story. Let's talk about some of the spaces that we see behind us. I don't know how long that one's going to be up. Oh, good, it's like cycling through here. But one of the things that you do when you talk about classic architecture is you look for pieces that inspire a thing. And in this case, that island, I know, was one of those moments where you wanted to stay true to the house, but also bring in something that was surprising.
Yeah.
So talk about kind of how you integrate in something different so not everything feels the same.
The ends of those islands were designed, one of my favorite, I get really down in January. January is really a bummer. The holidays are over. It's really depressing. And what can lift you is the Armory Antique Show. I mean, it's just the best. So I always go to
This is what turns designers on.
So I go to the Armory Antique Show, and there was this piece of furniture with those X's, and that just nailed it. I just knew how I was going to design that island. I spend a lot of time studying Stanford White. Stanford White is brilliant, of McKim, Mead, and White, and going to a lot of the old Gilded Era homes. And when you look at the millwork in those homes, it just is an encyclopedia of proportion and simplicity. And a lot of my work really is Stanford White. It's his framing beads. I mean, the Choate estate in the Berkshires, I walked in there and I went, oh my God. And when you look at his designs, they are so simple. And his style sizes are different and his rail sizes are different. And I've just spent countless hours studying and measuring. And that's where most of my design inspiration comes from. And I spent a lot of time in the Ogden Mills Mansion in Stottsburg, New York, and the butler's pantry there, and worked with the curator. And that really, it's classic. It's timely.
Yeah.
People say, well, what's a trend? I don't know trends.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a kitchen that's going to last a lifetime. If you want to paint it blue now and you want to paint it white 20 years from now, it's still going to be there.
Well, and I think that's the thing that differentiates you, right? So I know for you, millwork is key in a kitchen, and that is where you think, not that that's the only place money should be spent, but you believe in investing in that because you said, if you do it right, it will last through, right? Is that still part of your philosophy, and why is that?
It is. I have a kitchen I have kitchens out there that are 35, 38 years old, and they're still, and someone will call me and say, I'm so tired of the countertops or the backsplash, and we'll change it, we'll change the hardware, we'll paint it. It's amazing how it's amazing how it, do you remember we went through that whole ankle ball molding? Do you remember all that stuff we used to put on cabinets? Oh, heaven help us, it was dreadful. And then now, after years of education and what I've done, I now go into them and take it all off and, clean it all up and really bring the kitchen into more of a timeless, once I educated myself more and more. But the key is a good foundation. You put good cabinets in and you put, really good millwork in, and it's going to last a lifetime.
And I can't say enough, even though I work for a brand that is about the moment, right?
Yeah.
1000% agree that kitchens can't be based in trends, right? This is a heavy duty investment.
Yeah.
God willing, you don't want to have to do it more than once in the
Right.
same home, but if you have to, it's only twice. But if you can have some of those fundamentals there, then you're much better off. And so when you think about timeless design, is that why you focus so much on classic architecture? Because it's going to blend and feel like it was part of the home, but in the best ways with the modernity, as you say, classic kitchens for modern living, with the modernity built in for how we now live.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So I'm bringing, with the understanding of kitchens, the modern part of it, the appliances and the cooking
Right.
and the location of things, and I'll say to somebody, I don't want to know what you like about your kitchen. I want to know what you don't like. I want to know what bothers you, because that tells me more about a person and the space than anything else does. And I also tell people, don't clean your kitchen. Keep it the way it is. I know I'm visiting you, but don't clean up. I want to see how you live. That really is important.
So you're kind of the voyeur when you go into a potential client's home.
Right.
You want to see real life so
Right.
that you can design for what's going to make their life function better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell us about maybe one of your most challenging, I don't know if it's up here or not, but one of your more challenging homes designs of a kitchen, and what was the challenge that you had to overcome?
I think every challenge is a pleasure.
You love them all.
I don't have an issue with any
Yeah.
of them. I have an issue when the architect doesn't understand access lines and flow. I struggle with that. I struggle with, I really do. I really do. I think that you have a good architect, it's going to all come together. Then you have to really get into what the client wants, what they need.
Sure.
And one of the things that I always say is that a kitchen cannot be successful without its surrounding areas. The mudroom, the laundry room. I always say that a kitchen is really the orchestra. And if you have an orchestra, you have, how many in an orchestra? 64 instruments? There's a certain amount of instruments. And does anybody know the answer to that question?
This is a Jeopardy question.
This is a Jeopardy question. And I say that if an instrument is missing, you're going to know it. And I always refer to a kitchen that way. And there are so many parts, and there's the butler's pantry, and there's a larder, and all of those supporting rooms make up the kitchen. And I actually believe that the most successful back of house is when you have the successful supporting rooms that will support the kitchen, which ultimately is supporting the front of house.
Does that mean then that on some projects, have you ever had to make a kitchen smaller to accommodate those other rooms? You have?
Yeah.
So that's how important those secondary spaces are to you.
It's better flow. I mean, having this giant room doesn't necessarily mean it's a good kitchen. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a negative. And having what modern day calls a Costco closet, or having a larder, or having a butler's pantry. Some of these older homes with these butler's pantries are beautiful, and utilizing them, and yes, you can make them feel brighter and larger, and did a beautiful Bowman home in Bronxville. Bowman was a wonderful architect that was inspired by Lutyens. Beautiful work, and I was so enthralled with that home and the hinging, and I'm always looking at the hinges and the size of the crown and carrying that into the kitchen. And it had a butler's pantry, but this kitchen wasn't going to function. It was just too small, just wasn't working. And the wall between the butler's pantry was taken out, which a lot of times I don't love to do, but it just made it work. And we still had the butler's pantry, and it still purposed itself as the butler's pantry, but it just, taking that wall down gave us the flow and gave us the ability to really move around in the space. So sometimes you have to do things to bring it in the 21st century, because back then they had the housekeepers and the chefs working in the kitchen.
Sure.
Now we're all in the kitchen. So we still have to make sure it works for the 21st century, but you maintain the character of the house from yesteryear.
How open do you like for a kitchen to be to the rest of the house?
That's a personal question.
Yeah.
That's really a homeowner. You know, if a homeowner wants it wide open, then I respect that.
Do you have to ask a lot of questions and make sure that's what they really want?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And what the husband may not, the husband may, you know, what the husband may want, the wife doesn't want.
Right.
And you just listen to people. I won't let a client go pick their appliances without me there, because they don't realize how much they're communicating. They don't even know they're communicating. And I'm working on a project right now. I just love them. They're just a wonderful couple. And I said, no, you're not going to the appliance store alone. I'm going with you. And they own a wonderful Relais and Chateau, just wonderful. These are the owners of Glenmere Mansion, upstate New York. If anybody wants to go away, they need to go to Glenmere Mansion. It's the best.
Didn't we all think she was offering us a free trip up there for a second?
So we were working, and we were at the appliance store, and Dan opened up one of the ovens. He said, "This is perfect when I'm making my jam." And I was like, you know, you didn't tell me you're making the jam. You know,
Yeah.
and then I hear he makes the jam, he makes the cookies. Well, all of a sudden, I just took a totally different direction in designing that kitchen. Nobody had communicated that to me. So, you know, and it was like, now we're talking about, well, do you want a leathered countertop? Is that going to ruin the bottom of the cookies? You know, he's really into doing all this.
Yeah.
So would that have come out eventually? Maybe, but it all got communicated when we were looking at the appliances. He was like, oh, well, I bake this, or I can do the jam in the steam oven, or I can, oh my God, it was just, so I don't let people out of my sight when I'm designing the kitchen. You know, you really need to extrapolate the information to make it work.
And when you talk in the book about a well-orchestrated kitchen, this is what you're talking about, the movement and the path. You know, it used to be all about the triangle, and I think to some extent there are still some fundamentals about how you move in your space, but it feels like now with homes, it's more about zoning out spaces so that you're not stepping over people to get to where you need to get to. If it's a breakfast area, if it's your wine room or wine space, if it's the wet bar, whatever, but having spaces that do the work that needs to be done there,
Yeah.
instead of having everybody essentially on top of each other, functioning, going in the same direction.
Well, it's really true, and there's different stations today. And appliances have changed so much. Yeah. It's like, where do you begin?
Right.
You know, you have the steam oven, you have a high-speed oven, you have a, you know, it's just endless. You have your convection oven, you have your gas oven, you have your electric oven.
And how many refrigerators
and then
do we
how
have
many
now?
refrigerators do you have? You know, it's really endless. And, you know, people are like, I want this really big freezer. Well, we have only so much real estate in this kitchen, so can we put this freezer somewhere else? Freezer is storage. It can go you know, so I try to help people through that. But the orchestration goes back to those supporting rooms. You know, I have to, sorry, Mark Ferguson, who I adore. Mark said to me many, many, many years ago, he said, you work on back of house. And it really is that back of house that is really to the supporting rooms for the rest of the house. And it's very hard sometimes to say to people, I'm a designer for back of house.
Nobody calls it that anymore, though.
You know, but he was right. And but back of house is so important.
Right.
To the rest of the house.
And while you're talking about those ancillary spaces, I will say that, you know, one of the things that I always love in great kitchen design is I get presented a lot of beautiful kitchens all the time for our magazine, but I'm always pushing back what's behind the pretty doors, because to me there's so much function that can be built in to give people, whether in a small space or a massive kitchen or a kitchen with ancillary spaces, all of those cabinets can work harder. It's one of the things that you do that I think, I don't know if you have any of the pictures up here, but that you do so well, where there's areas that pull out where all of a sudden all your spices are, little hidden areas that you have throughout kitchens that add in a lot of storage. Can you talk about how you plan that and where that shows up in the book?
You know, it's interesting you bring that up because so many people want gadgets, and gadgets can make a kitchen not work. So I'm very careful with where I put a gadget and what the gadget is. I'm pretty conservative. I think things like, you know, if you do a 24-inch deep drawer and you put frying pans in, you're only going to get another smaller pan in there. You're not going to get more. So what I always strive to do is have an elevation, especially near the range, where I can go to a 26, 27-inch deep clear. And what happens is...
Explain what that means.
It means that when you open the drawer, you have a full 26-inch deep drawer. Now you can begin to put... You don't lose any space. You can put 4 sets of pots and pans as opposed to 2 plus some little things.
Right.
People don't realize that just making those cabinets deeper, that to me is more important than whether there's some sort of pull-out, swing-out that's going to get in your way.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of chefs, and chefs really want function, and they want the opposite of what a homeowner wants. They want everything like right here. Like here's the refrigerator, here's the cooktop, you know.
Yeah, 0 steps.
They want 0 steps.
Yeah.
And they're cleaning it as they put it away. They want like one tall pantry that has the you know, everything, you know, all the baking. And so they work in a very tight, organized space. The family kitchen, on the other hand, is the big island, the stools, the refrigerators, the, you know, 2 sinks, the prep sink. Very different people you're designing for. Very different. So I believe in rollouts, function, depths of cabinets, depths of wall cabinets. I really take a classic aesthetic, but the function behind the doors is really, really important. And sometimes all those swing outs and pull outs are only going to cause problems. So I kind of shy away from them.
Yeah. You have to figure out, that's right, they hire you, right?
Yeah.
To help figure out where it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. You mentioned the family's kitchen and the chef's kitchen. Obviously, chefs have families too. When it gets back to their home, does it feel more like a family kitchen? You know, somebody else is cooking in there with them.
Yeah, I'm working with clients that have chefs, and
that's very different.
It's very different.
That is not my life, guys.
So it's a balance between if it's just a chef kitchen, then it's easy. If it's a chef kitchen where the family's in it on the weekends, it's a little bit of a juggle. So I'll have like a section for the chef, and then the family's more spread out.
Sure.
So you just have to really pay attention to what you're doing. And the most important thing that I always say to clients is, I want you to in your mind, I want you to walk through what you're doing. Go back home, work in your kitchen, and really think about it. You know, why, you know, you don't want your refrigerator right where your sink is, because if you have a family and you have somebody working at the sink and you have somebody trying to get in the refrigerator and you have a dishwasher, you know, I always call it bumper butts, because everybody's going to bump into each other and it's a bottleneck. So you have to spread it out to some degree. And because there's different appliances today, you really can spread it out, but yet keep it very compact.
With this being your first book, let me ask you this first. How many kitchens do you think you've done in your career?
Oh gosh, 40 years.
Times.
Yeah.
So when it comes to putting together your first book, tell us how you selected the projects that you put in here, because you have a portfolio that can fill up 10 of these.
Yeah, there were projects that were more modern. First of all, I did the projects that I really loved.
Yeah.
Because it was my book. It was my ability to do that. It was the projects that I was able to really apply what I believe in. There was a modern Palm Beach apartment in the book, and it was there for quite a while, and at the 11th hour, when everything was done, I woke up And I called the publisher and said, oh my God, I don't think this can stay in here.
I'm sure your publisher loved you that day.
And she said, it's got to go. Because it just...
She agreed.
She agreed. It just didn't resonate with what it just threw another wrench in.
Okay.
And it's a wonderful project, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But it wasn't where the book was going.
And this book is reflecting really your truth and how you love to design and the things that you consider to be the best elements of kitchen design.
Right. I wanted to use it because it showed that in the classical language, you can do any style you want, but it just, I don't know, it just didn't, it may have been that we were photographing it during COVID, and it was really hard to get into people's homes, and it was, down in Palm Beach, and I don't know, it just, so it got switched out.
So tell us about one of your favorite projects that you have in here.
I have a lot of favorite projects.
You have to pick one.
I really have a lot of favorite projects
Best
because
story.
the favorite
How about that?
projects are the people.
Right, so talk about that. Because so much of this book is you storytelling about where they started, what the home was, maybe what, I know there's been some renovations that you came in after it had maybe been renovated once or twice, and you weren't too happy with some of the decisions that had been made. And you came in to rectify and bring it back to what it should be.
I don't, well, this I did with Mark Ferguson and Damien and Bunny. I love this project. This had its challenges, but it really is a wonderful project. And till this day, I love her. I mean, I'm always in touch with her, and the dogs. I love dogs. Anybody that has a dog, I love them. And they have 3 dogs.
Well, tell us where this started, how this one started.
Well, Bunny really was the one that brought me into this project, and Mark, and she was a cook, and she said, I need somebody to help me with the kitchen. And so this is a perfect example of depths of drawers and wall cabinets, and really making sure that it works for her. We're still struggling a little bit with the range, but she's coming around. There's a fine line between I cook a lot and I want a really great range, where some of these ranges go a little more commercial. And this particular range is a challenge for her, but she's coming around. It depends on what. It depends. Okay. But right now it's okay. But I love my clients. That's what makes it, is to really stay with them for a very long time. This is a wonderful project. I don't know if it's coming up.
It's coming.
But this was with Philip Dodd it was a wonderful Georgian home, and it was a kosher kitchen. So the challenges of kosher kitchen is really 2 kitchens in one, and the flow of this was it was a challenge. It was a challenge, and it took some doing to get the meat section and the dairy section, and they loved more of a modern. But again, I love offset pivot hinges. I love them. And they were willing to do them. And this was a McKim meat in white, the framing bead and the proportions. And this was a lot of fun, and I did this with Philip Dodd. And the access line going into he wanted a whiskey room, and he loved Tiger Maple. So this was just a lot of fun, and I really wanted the wine units to be built and not be appliances, so we built the refrigeration system into the cabinetry, and the black gold marble. This home goes back to the 20s, and it was on all the fireplace surrounds, and I love black gold, and I think with the Tiger Maple, it's just so timeless. So
can we go back to the fact that you built your own wine refrigerator?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we just saw You had somebody do your refrigeration.
We did the millwork, and we bought the we bought the, the compressors, and
Yeah, totally, I know.
They're in a closet in the back.
You want to make a refrigerator, make a refrigerator.
Yeah,
It's great.
So they're in the closet in the back, and it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that is truly custom.
Yeah.
But I also know while some of these homes are grander in scale, you do everything.
Are you going to my little budget kitchen?
No, I am not going to your budget kitchen. It's not in the book. I'm not going to that kitchen. But she does do kitchens for every level.
It's a lot of fun.
It is, right?
It's a lot of fun, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's amazing about what you do and what you showcase in the book is just the breadth that you can get out of staying focused on the architecture of a space.
Yeah.
And so what I love as you guys flip through it and go through it is you're going to see so many different styles represented.
It is. It's also, one of the things that's happened is some of these clients, I'm on my 4th project for this woman. This is a wonderful home.
Now, I remember this one. You were not happy with those windows when you first walked into this house and the positioning of certain things.
Oh my God, this was dreadful. In the 80s, somebody put metal, that had metal balusters going up the stairs, and this was dreadful. And there's no words. So we had to bring it back to what it was and put the window in so that I don't know if there's a picture of the outside of the house, but we wanted it. This house was built in 1906. I apologize, I forget the name of the owner, and he didn't want it to burn down, so it's solid concrete. It's in Irvington, New York. It is absolutely stunning, and it's very symmetrical. So we landed up, somebody put a window in because there was a sink there, and they raised up the window, and it was like, you knew that they bastardized the house. So we brought the window back to what it was, and I love this project. And sometimes there's the balance of, where are you going to put the sink? And this kitchen was a challenge. And I landed up putting the freezer at the other end of the room. Mm-hmm. So she had this area. This is the primary area of the kitchen. But on the other end, where the breakfast table is the freezer, because I really ran out of space.
Yeah.
And this is where, on the other side of that, is the freezer, but this is where the breakfast room was. And to make it bigger, we used the antique mirror in the pantries. This was a challenge. This is not a wide room.
I knew there was a challenge in this book.
Yeah, this was a real challenge.
No, I remember this one so well, and the architecture of it is so specific, because the room is actually very narrow. It's a long, narrow room.
Yeah.
Because I don't even think you have a sitting island there, right? It's a working island.
That island, there it is. That's the freezer right there.
To the left. And then the right is a storage pantry.
And then that's all the small appliances.
Right.
But this town was so tough that she wanted a deeper island. We took her old countertop, put the countertop in, and I said to the builder, just sand it, make it look nice. We had to have 3 feet from this edge of the bottom stair to the edge of the counter, and they were so tough. They were measuring everything. And we did that. See, I extended the kitchen all the way into the breakfast area and used the window seats. But as soon as we got the C of O, we ripped out the countertop. And we put a deeper countertop in. And people probably look at it and say, what's going on here? Because it's only 8-inch overhang. Mm-hmm. But it was just to give her more space.
Yeah.
And then we did have cabinets under there. And she said, no, I don't want them. She said, I don't want them.
Yeah.
But it was tough. And then this was the butler's pantry, which
I love.
I just love. And she said, I want you to bring it back to what it was. And clearly it was Stamford White in my brain. So all those styles and real proportions, I have to give Mr. Stamford White the credit for. But and there's nothing more beautiful than going in a home that has quarter sawn oak and being able to bring it into the butler's pantry. This was somebody put in just a Formica pantry. This is what this house is. No, this is another house. This is a Bowman house. I'm very inspired by the architecture. This is a Bowman house in Bronxville, the one that I was telling you about before when we took the pantry wall down. But look at the detail. And he was inspired by Lutchens. When you look at those fireplace, the chimney, you always know that Lutchens kind of has a part of the inspiration here.
Well, I'm going to do a little bit of a speed round with you. Okay. So you were talking about rough stone oak. Tell me, are you somebody that likes painted cabinets, or do you always like to bring in some sort of natural wood?
I like them both. I love the fact that wood's coming back so strongly. People are going back to wood. You see it more and more. You see it on an Instagram feed. It's just really coming. I love that it's coming back. This is a Cerussed quarter sawn oak. This is how we brightened up this Bowman house, as we did a Cerussed oak. And the hammered hardware was inspiration from all the hardware in the house was hammered. Gorgeous. So and then the metal backsplash. This was also great. This is a beautiful home in Darien, Connecticut. This was an addition that was put on.
Are islands going to stick around?
Oh, sure.
Okay. And what should they really be used for?
A lot of people don't want sinks in them anymore. They really want them as just a whole space to work on, to stage on, to Dan wants it to bake his cookies. Depends who it is.
What's too big for an island?
You mean an aircraft carrier?
I've started to see them get extremely, I don't even know how you get to the middle to clean them.
That's when they're too big.
Yeah. Okay, what is your must-have appliance outside of, obviously the fridge, the dishwasher, microwave, and oven?
Steam oven.
A steam oven. Steam convection or steam?
It's a steam convection.
Steam convection.
Yeah,
okay.
They're really great. I want to say to people, when you pick your appliances, you have to be committed to learning how to use them. And if you're just going to put them in and you're not going to use them, don't do it. And the support out there from the appliance manufacturers is huge.
Yeah.
You really have to take the time to understand how to use them.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of those companies now will even let you come in and cook right on those appliances before you even buy, which is always nice. When people are thinking about a kitchen remodel, what is the one thing, and now I've already said millwork, so you can't say that, but what is the one thing that you think they should invest in if they're tight on budget?
Professionals.
So you?
Yeah.
Okay, second thing.
Well, not just me, it could be...
Well, you're professionals.
Just professionals.
Yeah.
You really need help putting it together because a lot of people can't design, they design in the specific. Do you know what I mean by that?
No, I don't.
Like, that chair, I love that chair, I'll put it over here, and then they'll see something else, I love this, I'll put it over there, and they don't look at it as a whole.
Ah, okay.
And I think that's a problem today when people are designing, and I think that you always have to look at it as a whole, and the professional is always going to help you and guide you and make sure you stay on course.
Right, I would think especially with a space like this that's got so many technicalities to it. And I think, let's see, is there such a thing as too many appliances, you with all your ancillary spaces?
If they're not going to use them, you really can tell when somebody is like, oh, what's the best gadget? What can I use? And I was like, oh God, it's going to be used for a week and then it's not going to be used. So there's a balance.
Yeah.
Everything in life has a balance and moderation. And I try to guide people, and some appliances are right for somebody and some aren't. So there's a balance.
I want to thank you for being part of this conversation.
Thank you.
I have to tell you guys, I actually had an early copy and then another copy because my mailman beat up my book, so it's like I need another one. I love this book. It's chocked so full of great information.
Thank you.
Beautiful pictures of your work. And I also wanted to make sure if anybody had any questions for you, that there was time to ask. So any questions out there? It can be about your own house too. This is free advice from somebody that costs a lot of money. Any questions? No? All right. Well, sure. Go, please.
I think we have what you would consider a budget kitchen. We have, a New York City apartment with a small kitchen. We have no butler pantry. We have no anything. We have a small kitchen. And we're thinking about redesigning it to be more efficient so things are more accessible. Where do we start?
you really need to start with talking to somebody. The function is before the aesthetic. And so we have to see it. You know, we have to, anybody that tries to help you design it without visiting the site isn't going to help you.
Where would you start?
Where would I start? I would start by seeing the space, coming and seeing and talking to you in the space. That's actually a really good question, because when people call me, I really want to visit them in the space. I can't help anybody if I don't see the space. So that would be the way to start, is to meet you there, walk through it, and just talk to you, ask questions.
She's down for it, trust me. So no other questions? Well, oh, please.
I'm just wondering if you have clients who have an established way of working in their space, like the kitchen flow and all of it works well for them, but it's outdated, or, you know, do you, I'm just wondering to what degree there's introducing new ideas to people. Because they have their set way of doing things, I want this, I want that. Do you sometimes find it's worthwhile to sort of open their mind to new ideas?
You have to.
Yeah. And what are those things usually?
I have so many people. I know what I want. I can't tell you how much I hear that. I know what I want. Okay. So if you're coming to me and I'm not providing objective information, I'm not doing my job. And I'll basically say to somebody, you can listen. You don't have to do what I say, but I am going to tell you what I think. After 40 years of doing this, I'm not afraid to tell you what I think. And I think that it's eye-opening for people. It's like the boy that grows up in the city and doesn't know anything about the country. It's the same for somebody in their kitchen. I love my kitchen, but I need to do it over. And it's perfect the way it is. And then I start talking to them, and an hour and a half later, everything they said went to hell in a handbag in there. You know, I just did one where she was like, she called me up and said, I know what appliances I want. I'm a cook. I went to culinary school, and I'm a baker. I was on the phone with her for an hour, and everything she said to me, she was like, oh my God. And she just threw it all away and said, okay, let's start over. And
what are the most sort of common misperceptions or issues that people maybe need to reconsider or look at differently?
Everybody's different. I have to listen to the client. Once I talk to them for a little while, I'm able to, I know the direction to take them. And it's their direction, it's just guiding them. You know, you have to start with appliances. You have to start with seeing the space, and then you have to pick your appliances. You can't design a kitchen without the appliances. You just can't. They're so much a part of the room.
It also makes me think, Sarah, you know, with people, with kind of how much people now are going after quartz. I know one of the things you push folks to, like people will call you and probably say, I want this quartz countertop, I've got family, I like to do X, Y, and Z, I'm worried about something being ruined, and you'll push them towards quartzite, you know, which is stronger and more durable.
Yeah, I'm not a lover of quartz. I think quartz is great for laundry rooms, certain areas, but not a kitchen. I think that quartz is a man-made product with its 92% crushed stone and 7% resin. And I have a problem with the resin from a manufacturing point of view because a lot of people get sick from it. And I think that I did one kitchen with quartz countertops, and we've had to go back twice and replace it because it's cracked. And we're convinced that somebody's standing on it, changing light bulbs. You have kids. You got, kids stand on the counter. They want to get something. But I'm not. I really think quartzite, which is a natural product and a hard product, I really would rather people go with a natural material in a kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that concludes our conversation.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks.